everyone, Jai Hind and welcome to the platform of StudyIQ IAS in English. And in this video, we'll be talking about a complete shift or a paradigm shift from the cis-centric syndrome to the metabolic-centric approach when it comes to PCOS. Now, the name of the PCOS or Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome had been changed to PMOS. All right. So over here, when it comes to PCOS, basically it had affected more than 170 million of the women globally. As well as these women, around 10 to 13% of them, they are in the reproductive age. And beyond the statistics, this disorder, it stands as a leading global cause for the irregular menstruation, as well as one of the most common drivers of the infertility as well. And this demands urgent public health attention that should be there. Now, what is the biological root cause? The biological root cause is basically not the cyst, but it is the inappropriate hormonal signaling. What happens is that there is flawed signaling where the cycle begins with the disruptions in the body's foundational hormonal communication network. Now, because of this flawed signaling, there is hyperandrogenism. Now, what is hyperandrogenism is basically there is increased secretion of the androgen, that is a male hormone, and ultimately that leads to the problem. And this problem is systemic imbalance. Because of the resulting hormonal fluctuations, it cascades throughout the body. All right, it dictates widespread physiological changes which are far beyond the reproductive organs which are there. So it is just beyond the ovaries. It is a multi-system disorder that we are talking about, and it affects the endocrine as well as metabolic disorders. There are fluctuations which impact the weight, metabolic health, and the long-term cardiovascular risk are also there. It also impacts the reproductive health of the female because there are irregular or infrequent periods, there are pains as well as that includes heavy menstrual bleeding, and there are abnormal ovulation along with the infertility that is associated with the syndrome. There is also dermatological implications because it leads to acne, oilier skin, excessive face or the body hair, and even the female pattern baldness is also seen. And there is psychological aspect as well because there is profound mental health that is impacted, and there is distress that this syndrome causes. At the same time, when it comes to the anatomical, so the cyst which develops in the ovaries, please remember that this is an occasional feature and not a defining trait of the complete, the syndrome that we are talking about. Now, when it comes to the historical evolution, so it was in 1935 that this was, named after, or it was named Steen-Leventhal syndrome after its identifying physicians. Later on, the cyst myth was seen because, when it comes to PCOS, it was named as PCOS or Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome because after the ultrasound findings, there was cyst which was seen in the ovaries. Now, these cysts are actually immature follicles which are there, and they are not actually pathological cysts which are there. Later on in 2003, there was Rotterdam criteria that was established and the global diagnostic standard. Now it is now moving towards the metabolic focused revision of the PCOS, and ultimately today you can see that India is called as PCOS capital because of the genetic predisposition and rapid urbanization driven lifestyle shifts which is leading, or it is increasing the risk of the PCOS. Now this has been changed. Now there was the misnomer when it comes to the PCOS. PCOS is Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. So the myth was that the term implies to the mandatory presence of the pathological ovarian cyst which are there. But in reality, like I said, that the pathological ovarian cyst, they are not feature of this condition. While some follicles, they may appear cystic, but they are actually not two cysts which are there, and the current name, it reflected only one organ entirely failing to capture the disorder's truly multi-system endocrine and metabolic nature that is there. And therefore, it had a cascading cost on the inaccurate terminology as well. Now, there was first thing is that it led to the patient confusion, or the misnomer breeds misunderstanding among the patient, the clinicals, as well as the public, and the contributing that contributed to profound dissatisfaction with the care. Then the second thing was that there was socio-cultural stigma also that was associated with the disorder. The reproductive focus was hyper-fixated on the fertility, as well as it caused immense distress in the socio-cultural context where the fertility, it carries a lot of high value, and that led to the clinical delay. All right. Ultimately it had hindered the effective communication between the patient and the health professionals, and severely it delayed the accurate diagnosis, and ultimately this has led to the systemic roadblocks where it had complicated the global epidemiological classification, research comparability, and even the health system coding. And that is the major reason why we have shifted to the new terminology. Now, when it comes to the leader who had been, the main focus behind this complete shift, her name is Helena Tide. She is director of the Monash Center for Health Research and Implementation and also endocrinologist at Monash Health. Now, she championed the change after the decades of the research of the condition as well as witnessing the patient impact firsthand as well. Now, this was reported in the Lancet. This change is the result of an unprecedented rigorous global consensus, and it actively engaged the patients, multidisciplinary health professionals and global organizations to correct this complete nomenclature. And that is how we have the new nomenclature, that is PMOS. That stands for Polyendocrine Metabolic Ovarian Syndrome. Now, this is where we have these names. Polyendocrine actually acknowledges the complex multi-hormonal signaling disruption, which is the root of the condition. Metabolic, it highlights the critical impacts that it has on the weight, on the mental health, and even the overarching metabolic system. Then ovarian, because it retains the reproductive aspect without the misleading mandate of the pathological cyst. So there is no mention of the cyst, but yes, ovaries, they had been retained into the nomenclature because this impacts the reproductive health. And syndrome, because it recognizes the condition as a collection of diverse interconnected features that requires the holistic management, and that is why we have shifted to PMOS nomenclature that we have. So this is how you can compare both of them. The PCOS was basically focused upon single organ, but now we have multi-system where we PMOS, it is where endocrine as well as metabolic disorders had been included. Also, earlier the PCOS was misleading and it had falsely implied that there had to be mandatory cyst. But now PMOS is accurate and it reflects the diverse physiological reality of the disorder or the syndrome. The PCOS, it had reinforced the fertility-centric stigma and distress. Now, PMOS have destigmatized and holistically validated the complete syndrome or the disorder, and PCOS had earlier complicated the classification and the coding as well. But now, by moving towards the nomenclature of PMOS, it improves the scientific coherence and even the comparability as well. Alright, so now why it is a crisis in India and why India is called as PCOS capital. Now there is epigenetics, that is, there is the thrifty gene hypothesis, high insulin resistance that is there in the Indian population. Also, there had been a complete dietary shift that you will see where we are shifting from the traditional food to the ultra processed and high glycemic index food in India. There are environmental factors as well, that is EDCs or the endocrine disrupting chemicals which are present in the plastics and the pesticides and even the sedentary lifestyle that we are following right now. Alright, so there is structural lack of the safe public spaces for the women's physical activity, and ultimately all these things, they are complicating the burden of the PMOS and the cases of the PMOS that are rising in India, and India has the highest number of the cases that are there. Now, when it comes to the complete syndrome, it leads to the ripple effect as well. There are short-term effect that could be seen, and ultimately if we will move towards the PMOS and there is a complete shift of the nomenclature, so there will be improved early diagnosis in the adolescent girls, and ultimately better management of the acne and hirsutism will improve the self-esteem as well as quality of the life. Also, in the medium term, it will reduce the burden of the gestational diabetes and preeclampsia that will protect both the maternal as well as the child health outcomes, and ultimately this will have a global impact as well because the India's PMOS shift, it is likely to influence the WHO's ICD-11 updates. It will set a precedent for the low and middle income countries as well. But at the same time, you have to remember over here that untreated PMOS, it is a precursor to the endometrial cancer as well and non-alcoholic fatty disease even. So this is again a concern, and there should be proper treatment that should be given for these, for the syndrome. But at the same time, when it comes to the treatment, so it could be treated only. Because this is the clinical reality that there is no cure of the PMOS. It could be treated, but there is no ultimate cure. Alright, there is preventive health that focuses on the long-term systemic protection, specifically reducing the risk of the endometrial hyperplasia, even endometrial cancer and future cardiovascular events as well. Alright, there is a quality of life that have to be seen because ultimately day-to-day metabolic and dermatological manifestations have to be managed accordingly, and weight outcomes, skill health and the mental well-being have to be looked after. And also there have to be reproductive support which actively assist with the fertility goals and the regulation of the menstrual cycle. So this is a clinical reality that there is no cure for the PMS and it has to be managed symptomatically. Alright, so this is again very important because PMS matters for the public health policy, because there will be removing the misnomer. It will clear the clinical and the patient communication. It will also reduce the delay in the diagnosis and optimize the direct care resources as well. There will be a medical accurate name that will unlock the targeted research funding for it, as well as it will improve the scientific coherence across the various global studies which are there. And this is also accurate nomenclature which will streamline the health system coding and epidemiological classification as well. This will allow the governments to track the crisis and align the policies effectively, and that is why it is very important that India had taken a very important and significant step by renaming PCOS as PMOS. So that would be all in this video, but at the same time do not forget that right now we are giving you the offer of 50% off as well as the double validity on the platform of StudyIQ IAS. Now for availing this offer, what you need to do is you need to use the BRS Live code. Alright, if you use the BRS Live code, you will see that ultimately you will get the maximum discount along with the double validity. But also over here, you have to understand that this offer is valid only up to 15th of May. Alright, this offer is valid on all the UPSC courses which are there. You can enroll into the Resolution P2I batch, which is GS Foundation batch, and also you can enroll into the Public Administration batch, which is an optional batch for which the classes will be starting from 15th of May. So that would be all in this video. Thank you very much guys for joining me over here, and I hope that now you have a complete understanding why the PCOS name had been changed to PMOS. So that would be all. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care. Jai Hind. I'll see you in the next, but do not forget to like, share as well as subscribe to our channel so that you do not miss any of the updates. Thank you. Bye-bye and Jai Hind.